Hey everybody, welcome back to another YouTube tutorial. My name is Instant Naming Game Dev, and today we'll talk about the basics of implementing FSR2 to your Unreal Engine game. So, currently we are on native rendering, and we're getting about 40 to 50 FPS, but I can go to FSR2 quality here, and change it to quality, and now you can see my FPS jumped. I can also play around with the sharpness to improve texture quality, and I can do this for balanced performance and ultra performance. So if I set this to ultra performance, I got a massive jump in FPS with a bit of a hit in quality. So without further ado, let's get into the tutorial. Okay, so before we can actually add FSR2 to Unreal Engine, we actually need a plugin to do that. Now, here on screen is a link to that plugin and will also be down below in the description. Now this is from gpuopen.com, which by the way is a division of AMD. This is a fully official product. If you went to the Epic Store and tried to download it, it would anyway redirect you over here. So if I scroll down a bit, you'll see there's this download Unreal Engine FSR2 plugins. Now you can also see just above that download like a button, there's going to be this latest version text. Now this text also explains to you what version of Unreal Engine is the latest it supports. Now currently, as I'm recording, 5.2.1 is the most stable Unreal Engine release. So this works for the latest Unreal Engine release for me, but just make sure if you're watching this video in the future that this supports your version of Unreal Engine. Anyway, you just want to go ahead and click download Unreal Engine FSR2 plugins. Now if you click that, it will download a zip file. But I already downloaded the zip file and extracted it, and this is the extracted result. So if I open up this extracted folder here, I'll find this FSR 2.2.1 folder. If I open it up, I'll find multiple FSR folders. Now the numbers at the end might seem a bit random, like 520, 510, 500, but they are representative of what version of Unreal Engine they work for. So 520 will be for 5.2, 510 will be for 5.1, and you get the general gist, right? In my case, I'm using 5.2.1, so I'm going to open up the FSR2 520 folder. Now I'm going to find three files. The first file is a patch file. I'll talk more about that after setting up FSR2. It's going to be way later in the video. Then I have this FSR2 movie render pipeline folder. This is if you want to use FSR2 for movie rendering in Unreal Engine. So if you're going to render movies in Unreal Engine, you'd use that. Now of course this tutorial is more focused on games, so I'm just going to install FSR2 normally, right? Okay, now that we have this folder, we need some instructions on how to install it. Now if I alt-tab into this website where we were and scroll down a bit, I'm going to find setup, and then I'm going to find installation procedure. So the first thing we have to do is locate the engine plugins directory of your Unreal Engine install. Now if you know where your Unreal Engine is installed, you can just go to that folder. But if you let Epic decide for you where to install it, this is where it's going to probably be. So if you go to your content browser, you want to go to this PC, go to local disk C, go to program files, then you want to go to the Epic Games folder, then you'll see this UE folder, currently -5.2. I want to open it up, then you want to go to engine, and then plugins. And if I alt-tab, that was the folder we should be in. Then we have to extract the content of FSR2 zip, we did that, and then we selected the subfolder, so what version of FSR2 we want, and then finally, we want to put that FSR2 folder at engine plugins runtime AMD if we're using UE4, but we're using UE5 in this case, so we want to put it in the engine plugins marketplace folder. So if I alt-tab, I just want to look around in this plugins folder, scroll down and look for a marketplace folder. Now I haven't installed marketplace plugins yet, so I'm not going to have that folder. So if you don't have the folder just like me, all you want to do is you want to right click, go to new, and create a new folder. Then you just want to name this Marketplace. And so you just want to make sure it's precisely like that, spelled like that and everything. Then you want to go ahead and open it up. Then you want to go back to your folder with the FSR2 and the FSR2 movie render pipeline, and you just want to drag in the FSR2 folder into your Marketplace folder you just created or found. And now you have FSR2 installed for the most part. Now all we have to do is really just open up the engine and enable this plugin. So let me go ahead and open up a project that I want to use FSR2 in. Okay, so here I have a project specifically made for FSR2, but this project does not have the plugin enabled. So how do you enable the FSR2 plugin? Well, you want to go to the top left, go to edit, go to plugins, then type in FSR, and then you'll find this FSR 2.2 or whatever version of FSR you installed. And then you just want to toggle that on, and then you just want to click restart now, which will restart your engine. So see you guys when it's done restarted. Okay, and so we're back in Unreal Engine, and all we have to do is just close this plugins window. And how do we know FSR2 actually installed? So it's pretty simple. If you go to top left, go to edit and go to project settings, and you scroll all the way down, you should see under plugins, there's a FidelityFX Super Resolution section now. If I click on that, I have a lot of settings to adjust here. Now I recommend you look through the documentation because some of these settings could make or break the quality of FSR2. And it's great to have knowledge of specifically how FSR2 works. So there's all these settings, right? But the thing is, like stuff like the quality mode, stuff like the sharpness, usually games allows the players to adjust those when they're in the graphics settings, because of course FSR is subjective and some people want it on and some people want it off. So how do we actually let the player pick this? So let me show you how you can actually make the player adjust this in-game. So if I go to top here, you can see I have this VBP underscore FSR UI thing. If I click on that, it is a widget blueprint. And so on screen, I'll show the current FPS, the render resolution, the FSR quality, the sharpness, and the estimated scaled resolution. So if I go to my graph, I have this messed up code there. We're not going to talk about that. It's kind of a bit iffy there. But here, I have an on selection change node. So in my design, if I go back, I have this FSR quality drop down menu. So if I click on that, I have 5 options. There's off, quality, balance, performance, and ultra performance. Now if I go to my graph, you can see that there is now a switch node. So 0 means that FSR is off. So how do you turn FSR off if it was on? Well, all you have to do is do or.fidelityfx.fsr.enabled space 0, and that will disable FSR. And then I also changed the anti-aliasing method. Now, if you actually are going to package a game with FSR, or well, package any form of a game, I would suggest you learn about get game settings or set game settings. I just didn't do that here because I just specifically wanted to focus on the FSR part of this. Okay, so how do you turn FSR on? Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to set the R anti-alias method. So you have to change the anti-aliasing method. So what should you change it to? Well, if I go to my project settings and I go scroll all the way up to all settings and I type in anti-aliasing, you'll see there's this anti-aliasing method setting. Now currently it's on temporal super resolution, but if I click on that, I want to change it to temporal anti-aliasing when using FSR, because FSR2 wants you to specifically use temporal anti-aliasing. this specific setting. So when I turn FSR on, I change it to TAA specifically. Then I just type r.fidelityfx.fsr.enabled space 1 to enable FSR. And then I'd set the quality mode, so r.fidelityfx.fsr2.quality mode 1. So what are these quality modes? Well, if I go back to this website and scroll down a bit, you'll see the section called quality modes. So there's quality, balanced, performance, and ultra performance. And each of these qualities have a specific way to enable them. So quality will be mode 1, balance will be mode 2, performance will be mode 3, and ultra performance will be mode 4. So you just want to set that mode based on the setting the player is currently using, right? Okay, so then I do this, set appropriate render resolution. So this is kind of going against what the documentation tells you to do. And if I Alt-Tab and go back to the documentation, you'll see that the plugin will use specific quality mode specified via the console variable, overriding screen percentage. So FSR2 claims that it just changes the render resolution to work with these quality modes. And while that is true to an extent, I found for some reason if the player ever adjusts the screen percentage on his own, aka the player has adjusted the render resolution before turning on FSR, turning on FSR, then for some reason it just ignores them. And so I kind of forced the plugin to use screen percentages that fit, because the plugin straight up just ignores screen percentage if the player ever messed with it, okay? So when this is on quality mode, which is a 1.5 upscale, all I do is I take a 100% render resolution and divide it by 1.5. Then for balanced, I do 1.7 division. Then for performance, I do a 2% or 2x division, so 100 divided by 2. And then for ultra performance, I do 100 divided by 3. And then I update the render resolution. Remember, if you're going to package a game, you probably want to look and set game settings and save game settings, because that works great for a package project. Like I said, this is just a quick and dirty solution, right? Okay, now there's also another element to games that support FSR. Now, games that support FSR2 usually have a sharpness setting. So if I go up here, I update the sharpness by using r.fidelityfx.fsr2.sharpness. And then I set it to a value based on this slider here over. So this value is from 0 to 1. So 0 is 0 sharpness and 1 is max sharpness. You want to give the player the settings to work with this, because some players prefer the sharpness, while some don't really like the sharpness. I like a bit of sharpness, it really makes FSR2 look good, but your player might not want that. Okay, so these are all the important settings you need to adjust. So if you're turning FSR off, you just want to use enabled 0 and change the anti-aliasing method to whatever you want. If you're going to use FSR, make sure your anti-aliasing method is set to TAA, then enable FidelityFX FSR2, and then change the quality mode. And if you're having problems, change the render resolution accordingly. Okay, so that's everything we need to know to actually work on this, or actually use this. So let's actually test this code. If we go to this Hannah, this is a map I downloaded from the marketplace. The link will be down below, but this will just be used for testing purposes. So if I press this, open a new window folder, because FSR is really iffy if you're working in the editor viewport, so I made it open external window. If I go ahead and I'm gonna wait, yeah, maybe I want to save. If I'm gonna play here, I'm just gonna save selected, and it's going to open up this window over here. I'm going to go ahead, press F11 to full screen this, and if I press E, you can see here on the bottom, I have the current FPS, the render resolution, the FSR quality, the FSR sharpness, and the estimated resolution currently. So, currently, I'm getting about 30 to 40 FPS, which usually, if I'm playing like a story-based game, I can totally live with this. But if I was playing like an online shooter, I'd probably want closer to 60, or at least close to 60 as possible. Okay, so we have a few problems. The resolution is very high, but the FPS is pretty low. And also there's really jagged lines. I wish I could smooth that, but then I'd use anti-aliasing, which would be more costly. Okay, so let's test FSR in action. So if I go to this FSR quality and click drop down and change it to quality, you can see my FPS sharp to the 50 to 60s. And sometimes if I like move very sporadically, it will go down to the 40s. But this is a huge improvement over what it was. Now I can already notice a few problems. If I move, these cables here in the top sometimes kind of go invisible in a way. Which is a bit annoying, but also the textures feel just a bit muddy. Now I find what fixes the muddy textures is the sharpness folder. So let's go look at this brick wall over here. If I go here to the bottom left and change the sharpness, I don't know if the stream or the video you're watching on YouTube will pick this up, but this is a huge change in quality. So on sharpness 1, this brick wall just looks way better, and this sounds really dumb to say, but I feel like this does look better, or look very similar to native rendering, but with a massive performance boost. Okay, so let's change the FSR quality once more. We're going to change it to balanced. Okay, now you can see my frame rate jumped into the 60s, and it's rarely dropping into the 50s with sporadic movement. This is totally fine for playability, and while I would say there is a bit more ghosting, if this was the thing to push my game over 60 FPS, I would probably do it. Okay? But then we have two more settings. If I change it from balance to performance, now this is more for me like a last ditch resort. Yeah, my frame rate is in the 70s, and if I move sporadically, it will go down to the 60s. This is almost double the frame rate, but there is a quality hit, especially with the fencing and all that, and with some of the flickering. If I had a very bad computer, I would probably do this. But if I could get away with balanced, I'd rather use balance. Balance is way better in this case. It's still impressive what FSR2 can do with 540p, but I would rather not do this. Then if I change from performance to ultra performance, that's where everything goes wrong. There's a lot of flickering here in the back, a lot of flickering here on the side, and yeah, it's just a flicker fest, a lot of ghosting. It's questionable. But it's impressive what it could do with only 350p of information. And my FPS sometimes goes into 100 and rarely drops into 70s with like heavy movement. Yeah, it has a lot of ghosting, but this has doubled the frame rate, and this kind of shows the power of FSR2. This can provide a very good quality, or at least a decent quality image with way better performance. Now that really means to me that if you have a game that might be struggling on very low-end hardware, then this could be the thing that makes those lower hardware be able to play your game. Okay, so now we have tested FSR2 and I've showed you how to implement FSR2. You're probably asking a question if you have worked with FSR, and that is, Well, you just showed how easy it is to implement FSR2 in Unreal Engine. So why are so many games still using FSR1? Well, if I go ahead and close this build, the problem is that FSR2 is very complex. While it is easy to turn on and work with, it is hard to get it to optimize and make it look as good as possible. FSR2 works with velocity passes to make sure that there isn't any ghosting or reduced ghosting. There's a lot of aspects to FSR2 that you need to optimize, and for that you need to read into this page, you need to read into the documentation and learn more about FSR2. But also, FSR2 can actually be better, way easier, if you have a version of Unreal Engine that was compiled from GitHub. So, if you remember, I talked about the patch file that it was included with the FSR2 folder. I'm just quickly going to go ahead and open that folder to show you. So this folder over here, you'll see there's this 5.2 lit reactive shading patch model, or model.patch folder file. The idea is that if you have a version of Unreal Engine that came from GitHub, so you built it yourself, then you can apply this patch file to your engine files to add a new shading model, which will avoid conflicts with current shading models and will make it easier to make models or textures that move, not ghost as much. And that's already just one of the things that you need to take into account, is that textures could ghost if they're moving, if you don't set them up right. So FSR really relies on a lot of knowledge about FSR itself, and a knowledge of some of game development stuff like velocity pass and all that. So learning those stuff is crucial for making FSR as optimized and as good looking as possible. And while I did show you how to enable FSR2, this is truly not the best way to make it look good. So for that you need to go on your own journey and find out how to optimize FSR2. But with that kind of small rant over, I want to say goodbye. So thank you guys for watching. If you like the content, please subscribe. Hit like if you liked the video, hit dislike if you didn't, and see you guys in the next one. Good night, everybody.
Just trying to get something.